Okay. First of all, happy Loving Day to everybody. Uh,
Yes.
I'm glad that the folks who are on the call could join us. But thankfully, we're recording this as well because I get it, the middle of a Friday. I may not want to be on a Zoom call. So thus, we can send this out later, which is great because I look forward to sending this to family and friends to view later. So we'll be getting that out in our respective newsletters. So yes, today is the 53rd, I believe, anniversary of Loving Day. The Supreme Court decision that essentially struck down anti-miscegenation laws in the United States, or the remaining ones rather. And it was a historic Supreme Court decision. This decision basically allowed for my existence today, being that my parents were thus allowed to legally wed in the United States. My mother is a immigrant from Peru, and my dad's an African American, third generation Angelino. And thanks to this decision, they were legally recognized and able to wed. So what we'll quickly do is we'll do some introductions with the panelists that we have today. And I'll start, I guess I'll start with myself. My name's Andrew Lewis. I'm currently the president of the UCLA Mixed Alumni Association. Attended UCLA and have tried and been a supporter of the mixed community at UCLA, and now doing so on the alumni side of things in Westwood and UCLA, but also in the greater LA community. And I've never been a fan of doing introductions on behalf of folks because I never know what they want me to say or what the highlight is or what I'm not supposed to say. So I will let them do that themselves. So I will swing it over to Sonia Smith-Kang, who's absolutely a leader in the multiracial community and is doing amazing things with MASC, which I greatly appreciate.
And masks.
And
Yeah.
masks. That worked out well. That was not on purpose. So I'll let her give her introduction and tell you about herself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Andrew, and UCLA for being, one of the leading institutions. And so I'm thankful to have this opportunity to talk not only about Loving Day, but things that are happening in our world today. I, like you mentioned, have been in this multiracial, multicultural space going on almost 2 decades. So obviously I am I'm mixed. I've been in this skin for a long time. So I've been doing that part. My father's African American. My mom is Mexican. I'm a proud military brat who was born in the island of Puerto Rico, and then our family was stationed on the island of Oahu. And my husband is Korean. So we have been living and bringing in being an intentional family, bringing our multiculturalism into our home and with our children. One of the things that I do is serve as president of Multiracial Americans of Southern California, MASC. And I also, which MASC is an organization that has been around for over 30 years. We advocate and educate for the multiracial, multicultural, transracially adopted community, and also help support the wonderful allies that we have in our community. When I'm not doing that, I have a small business called Mixed Up Clothing. which sources fabrics from all over the world and turns them into fun everyday wear that children enjoy wearing and learning about the different cultures the clothing represents. So thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much, Sonia. And we absolutely appreciate you being on. So we'll swing it over to our next panelist. And she can also tell you a bit about herself and her involvement in the multiracial community. So I'll go over to Delia. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, you're correct, Delia.
Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you so much for inviting me to join the conversation today. My name is Delia Douglas. I am a publicist, and I'm also a board member for Multiracial Americans. So I work with Sonia in that area. I have been a publicist for over 12 years and amplify brands that are socially conscious and multicultural. And I am happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Great, thank you. And I see Lei under the Anderson family screen. Lei, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, awesome,
Hello.
wonderful.
My name is Leiauna Anderson, graduate of UCLA Psychology 1996. I am currently the Vice President of the UCLA Mixed Alumni Association and also a member of the Diversity Advisory Committee. I am a real estate agent in West LA, and I specialize in diversity in housing and generational issues. And I'm very happy to be here today.
Wonderful, Lei, and thank you for joining and jumping on. I know that you have a lot, as we all do, going on, and with Rex, and definitely appreciate it. So, okay, so today is Loving Day. We're here to talk about that, but also, you know, and this was kind of discussed, we had a small kind of panelist pre-call yesterday, and, you know, we couldn't have a proper conversation today without recognizing, you know, the moment that we're in, socially, culturally, politically, even racially awareness-wise in our country. There seems to be a bit of there is an awakening happening around social and racial issues in the moment, in light of, you know, several instances of police brutality against African Americans. And I'd say we're definitely at a tipping point, and possibly at a turning point as well, much as the country was during the Loving Supreme Court decision. That was a shift in awareness, a shift in consciousness, and also I think a shift in public perception of what is morally correct and not correct in our country with regards to that Supreme Court decision. And very much, you know, I think that the two moments may align in many ways. So my first question is, and we can start it off with, Sonia, is how do you see yourself as a mixed, multiracial person in this country in the current moment? How does that play into perhaps the larger conversation happening around Black Lives Matter and racial injustice? So kind of a umbrella sized question, but I think a lot of it relates right now.
Yeah, I have been grappling with, you know, my being mixed, and you know, it's appropriate that you have Delia on the call because she has been one of my very dear friends and trusted confidants, and because she has also been in this movement, I was able to, and we share, you know, our mixedness. So I was able to kind of talk about what this time means and kind of also deal with the extreme sadness and trauma and pain that my Black community is feeling. And I share in the loss with my brothers and sisters who have been lost and are fighting. Today, in fact, we will be out in solidarity with within the community, showing our support and recognizing that today is Loving Day. I wanted to kind of ask those kind of questions of, as someone who is mixed, Black and Mexican, were my feelings valid? Can I really, say that I'm, as hurt? Is there some kind of measuring stick that says, because you are, this percentage, or, you consider, did I have permission? And I opened it up on my social media page for Mixed Up Clothing, just kind of this, if anybody needed to hear it, I was talking to myself, but actually saying, that giving ourselves permission to have those same feelings without having to parse out, and shut down those kind of feelings of not feeling like you've been enough, which was something that I've dealt with, for a long time, not feeling Mexican enough or not feeling Black enough. So really giving myself permission to embrace my Blackness, and I have the right to be just as upset, and I am, and the hurt is still the same. My solidarity is still the same. So.
Wonderful, thank you. And Delia, I would pose the same question for you as a mixed multiracial person. How do you see yourself, in this role with regards to the larger narrative that's happening right now in this country around Black Lives Matter, around social and racial injustice? How do you relate as a mixed person?
Thanks so much for the question. I absolutely relate and see the parallels in Loving Day and Black Lives Matter, the movement. It, as a brown-skinned mixed individual, I've had the luxury of being very close with my father, who is Black, and as well as my family, his side of the family, that are melanin rich. And so having them so close to me and being a part of each other's lives, I feel like I'm deeply connected to what their experience is alongside what my own experience is as a mixed individual. And I also, I believe that most mixed people would say that we've also felt discrimination, and we've also felt where people have treated us differently, or we've been othered. So it's understandable that we would be able to see and recognize someone else's struggle as our own. And I feel like what is, it wasn't that, I growing up, I heard about the civil rights movement. My parents were big on sharing historical events as well as events that relate directly to our lives. But so I grew up hearing about the civil rights movement and where we were, where my family was during that. And then, of course, remembering the horrible Rodney King incident and the protests that followed afterwards, the rebellion. I remember hearing about that. So then here we are now with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we are still seeing the same things that we were told of. And almost, it's, while we've made some strides, we still have so much further to go. And I feel like something that I'm seeing that is really powerful is the history that we have made. With the Watts riots, it was, primarily here in Los Angeles, again with the Rodney King incident and the rebellion that happened after that. That was here again in LA area. This time we are global, and that level of support is groundbreaking. And I feel like the mixed community can even look at what's happening on a global scale and see that this is something that we can all speak out on this. It's happening across the globe. There's allies, there are people, there are Black Americans, there's people of all different cultures and religions, and it's powerful and beautiful to see.
Wonderful, thank you. I completely agree. And we'll go over to Lei, and I just want to add that, you know, when I do watch the peaceful demonstrations, you know, that are happening across the country, and it'll lead into my next question, but it does seem to be that multi, you know, cultural rainbow coalition that Dr. King spoke of, that, you know, really brings about change in this country. And I've been out personally to a few demonstrations, and it's just amazing to see the solidarity that's coming together. But Lei, I would ask you the same question of, as a multiracial person, you know, how you see yourself in alignment and solidarity with current events around Black Lives Matter, around, you know, racial and social injustice in the moment, you know, and how you, you know, how you fit into that larger narrative.
Sure. Well, I agree with everything that Sonia and Delia have said. And the only thing that I would like to add is I definitely feel like this moment in time feels different from other moments where people have come together to protest, to let their voices be heard. And, you know, in the past, I feel like as a mixed race Black woman that my own experience navigating the world has sometimes been questioned in my effort to show solidarity or to speak out and say that I understand and have empathy. You know, I grew up with a Black mom in that family, and so that was my experience to, you know, grow up in a Black family and with that culture. But then I also, you know, once I left the house and left the presence of my family, navigated the world in a little bit different way. And so I feel like for the first time, I'm not questioned about my legitimacy to be a part of that larger voice. I feel like maybe because there are so many non-Black people who've come together to join in this bigger voice, that their room has been made for people and women like me and Sonia and Delia, who are mixed race but are also Black women. And I feel like for the first time, I don't have to explain why I can speak out or speak out in solidarity, make my own experiences regarding Black Lives Matter be known. I feel like it's feels different this time.
Wonderful, thank you. And my next question, and we'll go in reverse order this time. So back to Lei quickly. But since the Loving Supreme Court case, the multiracial community in the United States has really blossomed. In LA, at least, the fastest growing demographic among young folks up till high school age are those who identify with more than one race. In the 5 decades since the decision, 1 in 6, this is in 2015, 1 in 6 newlyweds had a spouse of a different race or ethnicity, which is 5 times higher than that in 1967 when the decision came down from the Supreme Court. So I want to ask y'all about where you see the multiracial community today. It is present. It is here. I see it at UCLA. I see it in LA County. But I'd like to get your perspective on that. You know, we now have very prominent multiracial figures in America. We've had our last president was a mixed multiracial man. You know, I do a lot of political activity. I look at folks like Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, obviously Barack Obama. It seems like mixedness is now part of, you know, American mainstream culture. So I want to get your take on where you see the multiracial community today in 2020. We'll start with Leigh.
Sure. Just to go back a little bit, I was born in the 70s, and you know, even though like on my mom's side there was obviously some mixing, my great grandmother from Oklahoma always said that, you know, they were part Native American and to account for lighter skin or straighter hair and things like that. But I was the first, like, really sort of in the modern times mixed child on my mother's side of the family. And growing up in the late 70s and 80s, that term mixed, or at least in my neck of the woods, in my neighborhood, mixed meant black and white. And when I was probably about 10 or 12, one of my mom's cousins got married to a man who's from families from Thailand, and they had 2 daughters, and they became the next mixed children in our family. And that kind of changed the conversation and changed the perspective. And I see that happening, you know, as I got older. I realized, hey, mixed doesn't just mean black and white. That was my own experience, but mixed meant just mixed with 2 distinct cultures. And so I started to experience life with people who were mixed with white and Latino, or black and Latino, or white and Asian, black and Asian. And it really broadened my perspective about the mixed experience in the United States. And I think because, you know, you see all these families with these mixed children all of a sudden, I think what it does is it touches those monoracial members of the family and may open minds, and you know, they start to have different perspectives as they have family members who don't look like them, or who are a part of a different ethnicity, different culture. And so I really feel like since the 80s that the mixed coalition has grown to include so many different combinations. And I think the richness of the movement is just really accounts for where we've gone. And really, you know, those children in some ways educated those families and opened the minds of those families that may have had, you know, certain beliefs, and you know, the joining of the family. So I think the Loving decision in the late 60s definitely, you know, made an impact on that, as people felt more comfort that they weren't breaking the law. And so, you know, more people started, you know, expressing, you know, who they had love for. And so I just feel like the diversity of what it means to be mixed over the years has broadened the coalition, and you know, may in part account for what we see going on right now with the Black Lives Matter movement.
I completely agree. And we will, Delia, we'll go to you. And, you know, I think as I, you know, navigate in the last 5 years, you know, life in LA and California, in this country, I do see a lot more of the mixed experience that's now on TV, that's now, you know, part of social acceptance, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I see shows like Blackish and on ABC, and I see commercials that include, you know, very intentionally multiracial couples. And I'm at Target and I see very clearly, you know, mixed babies, you know, in advertisements. All that to say, it seems as though we're making progress in the mixed community and social acceptance. You know, aesthetically seems to be the case, but what is your take on the mixed community identity acceptance in America and where we are today? You know, maybe since the decision came down from the Supreme Court.
I would say that for many years, many mixed people felt that they were being asked to choose, that they were asked to select a side. That, you know, did you feel more Black than you did white, or where you found your identity? And I feel like now we are at a place where it is absolutely accepted, if not celebrated, for you to acknowledge everything that you are. And seeing the positive messaging through media, as you had mentioned, you know, Blackish, Mixedish, the shows that are out there showing, as well as campaign imagery showing families of mixed race or mixed identity, that I feel that it's almost given permission for folks to acknowledge that they are something other than other. And something that I'm seeing in specifically the multiracial Americans community, we have events that we host throughout the year, and mostly through Los Angeles and the Orange County area, but we receive almost daily messages from people either thanking us, from families specifically, thanking us for hosting these events or asking for more. And I believe that that is a testament to people's feeling that they are finding their community and that they are appreciative of the resources that are out there. You know, Leiauna mentioned, you know, she was a child in the 70s, and at that time there weren't any of those resources out there. There weren't television shows, there weren't books, there definitely weren't images of mixed race families at, you know, at whatever Target was back then. And which is probably Kmart or Fedco. Let me just acknowledge that I do know. Yes. We've come so far as a nation in acknowledging that there are mixed families. I'm also seeing, you know, representation of the Hapa community, Hapa families, and it's beautiful to see. It really is. And I think that mixed families in particular are not being asked to identify as just one thing anymore, and that is helping. And also your mention of Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, I had an opportunity to hear them both speak at separate occasions while they were campaigning. And it was very powerful to be sitting there as a mixed individual and hear this person on the campaign trail speak of what it was like to grow up being, you know, multiracial. That was incredible. And I feel like the world is watching, and other families are also tuning into that. And that's evoking that same feeling of pride and acceptance. And I think that while what we take from that also can be that we are standing true in our truth. And so we can then feel strong enough to support other causes and other movements. I hope that answered the question.
10 times over. And you know, you bring up some things that I didn't even think about in my question. You know, how much representation matters, and seeing yourself reflected in books matters, and having resources available specifically to your existence and identity matters. And it very much validates your existence. So I'll go to Sonia, you know, and as the leader of MASC and the Multiracial Americans of Southern California. I mean, you know maybe better than anyone else of where the multiracial community is today in 2020. You know, what does that look like to you, and where are we today as a community? How do you see those gains, that representation? You know, what is the mixed community looking like for you in today's age?
Yeah, well, I think they said it really well. I think the only thing that I would add just was that we've always been here. You know, the mixed community has always been here. It's just that now we have documentation. MASC was one of the organizations that helped fight for the census change. We have to, you know, remind ourselves that it wasn't until 2000 that we were able to even identify as more than one. So the fact that now we're having the data from Nielsen and Pew Research and the US Census is because of the work that folks like us, our predecessors, have done in the past to get these changes made. I'm so thankful to be part of that legacy that continues to work in this space. You know, we do have to still have some work to do. I'm looking at, you know, I have children, 4 children that have gone through the public school, and there's still federal forms that are guidelines that have not been followed, you know, so there's still some work to be done. I know some of the forms, even in college, I have 2 children that are in college that are still asking, you know, pick one. So there's still some work to be done. I love the mention of the mixed-ish and blackish and seeing those kind of things and just having the thirst to be seen and the representation. I love to see that there's so many different groups, and underneath the umbrella, we could kind of find, you know, find our group, find our resources, find our affinity groups that really speak to who we are. And now we're seeing, you know, more books being made. I just saw I think it was a dishwasher, I don't know, commercial, and it was a interracial couple. And we had, you know, the pleasure of meeting one of the young girls who was in a Cheerios commercial years back that really shut down, like broke the internet literally, of what, you know, what it having an interracial couple on TV. And now to see that, you know, kind of as being something that is now like, oh, look. And I think that is a testament to who we are as you know, community organizers, to make sure that there's representation. And you know, drawing back to the Loving Supreme Court decision, I think we take from that, I'm taking from that the fight and the pushback, that when something doesn't feel right, or you want to see something, there's work that you have to do and can do to have your voice heard. And I think that's one of the things I'm taking away. Loving Day was actually started about 17 years ago by one of MASC's really great friends, Ken Tanabe, who used the Loving B Virginia Supreme Court case as his thesis while at Parsons in New York, and started Loving Day. So I want to shout out Ken, who, which is why we celebrate today, but it's because he started this Loving Day. And he, again, like us, we kind of look around and say, how can we change things? What is it that we need? And how can we go about doing that? And that's one of the best things as president of MASC, that I'm just have the honor to work with folks that continue to ask these questions, and partnerships like with you guys and UCLA is really just how can we as a community continue to move this movement forward. And so it's my honor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that leads me to my next and final question as far as the recording, because I'm getting the chat messages that say, Andrew, we have to move along. So David and Corey, I see you. So what we'll do is we'll do a, let's do quick lightning round wrap up. With our three panelists, we'll do maybe 20, 25 seconds each. And the last question is where you see the mixed community heading into the future. It was alluded to previously, but where do you see that going? We've made a lot of gains in 53 years, but where do we go next? And we'll go, let's do 20 seconds each. We'll start with Delia this time. And where do we go next?
Where I see us going next is one, to continue sharing stories, continue owning every piece of our heritage, acknowledging it, celebrating it, and sharing it, and encouraging each and every person that we come in contact with to also do the same.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's go, Lei. Where are we headed? Where do we go next?
With no disrespect to our LGBTQ brothers and sisters in that community, you know, in this Pride Month, I kind of think of this phrase coming out of the mixed race closet, for lack of a better term. Because when I was younger, like Sonia was saying, before 2000, we were forced to pick this or that. You could only pick one thing on a form with the census, applying for university. Certainly when I applied to UCLA, you could only pick one thing. But I feel like the mixed community is going to grow exponentially, because I see people who have mixedness in their families and they were uncomfortable acknowledging that, because we've been forced to only pick one side, or to say I'm half this and half that instead of I am both this and that. I see the mixed race community growing very quickly, because I think there is an increased comfort with people being able to shout out and be proud to be this and that. And a testament to that is a friend who I went to high school with. And at a time, you know, in the 80s, early 90s, when I was berated for acknowledging that I was mixed instead of just saying Black, you know, one of those friends is now shouting from the rooftops that she's multiracial, Black, Filipino, and Scottish, and how rich her life experience is because of being mixed. And I see a lot of people who in the past didn't acknowledge it are now acknowledging it without in any way eroding their support for or their participation in one of or multiple of those backgrounds. And so I think people are saying, I can be this and that, and I can stand for this and that. And so that's where I see the mixed community going, and it's very exciting. And I think it's apparent in the support of Black Lives Matter right now, that I think a lot of the mixed community, and including people who aren't mixed with Black or African American or African heritages, that are standing up for this. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Sonia, we'll leave you the last word of where you see the mixed community headed. David and Corey, we're almost there. I know they got to run.
Yeah,
we're almost
mine
there,
is just mine is short and sweet. I wrote down. I just wrote down. We're gonna see more living our truths, and I heard that echoed by Delia, and I love that, the celebrating, the honoring of our ancestors. I think it's just really going to be a time where we get to really take all that we are. And I think it's going to be this beautiful movement of really coming to understand and educating ourselves, finding ourselves, discovering ourselves so that we can live our truth. And I think that's where we're headed. So I'm excited.
Perfect. Thank you. I want to thank our three panelists for joining us today and making the time. We're at a very, very interesting, pivotal, you know, I think crossroads in our country, much as we were 53 years ago during the Supreme Court decision. You know, I see many parallels of, you know, an acceptance and a moral awakening in our country that definitely parallels that. So I want to thank our three panelists for joining once again. Thank you, MASC. Thank you, UCLA, for allowing us to have this conversation, recording this. Again, this is being recorded, so this will be sent out respectively of our orgs, maybe together, and we'll get it out so folks can hear. But thank you for taking the time, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you.